concept that I'm talking about, right? For instance, if I say, yesterday I ate a sandwich, which is incorrect, right? Because I should have said yesterday I ate a sandwich. Okay. Even with that grammatical mistake, which is a tense problem, would you be able to understand what I meant? Okay. Would you understand that I actually meant yesterday? Yeah. It's past tense, right? Even though the tense is wrong, but since I said yesterday I eat a sandwich, it still implied that it happened yesterday. Okay, so there's no confusion. You can still kind of get what I meant by that. Programming languages are far less forgiving. In other words, the tools that we use for programming are very unforgiving when it comes to problems or errors in syntax or grammar in this case. The syntax of most programming languages must be exact, and any deviation will cause a program not to function. The tool will actually complain to you and say, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, you can, instead of using a comma, you use a semicolon. That breaks the program. Okay, if you forget to close one of the parentheses, even though it is very clear which one you forgot, the program will not work. Okay, you would just get complaints of all kinds. So that's the first obstacle. It's just really a matter of getting used to a programming language. The second part is not as easy. Programming logic. A systems analyst work with high-level logic, which you can just use a picture, use arrows and stuff like that to illustrate. Okay, this is kind of how things should go. At a program level, a developer needs to pay attention to a lot of details instead of just an overview. A lot of details. Programming requires extended periods of highly focused attention to logic. Okay, you need to really focus when you're programming, and these requirements will conflict with the duties of a systems analyst. A systems analyst, for the most part, has to interact with clients, just like an architect has to interact with you who's trying to build a house. Okay, so there will be a lot of meetings, phone calls, and so on and so forth. Programmers do not want those disruptions, because when you're writing a program, when you're focused on writing a program, you don't want any distractions. Can anyone kind of imagine why a programmer who has a lot of details to worry about do not want to be disrupted by phone calls and meetings and other things that has nothing to do with programming? How many things can you track in your mind at any particular time? Not too many.
Just one.
Just one. Okay. Very single-minded. Very good. It is actually a good trait when it comes to programming. Okay. So most people can track maybe 7 or 8 things at the same time, depending on what things we are talking about. A systems analyst, okay, for doing the technical part, may only have to keep track of 3 or 4 things at the same time. So that kind of leaves a little bit of buffering to deal with phone calls, clients calling in, meetings, and other things that they have to worry about as a systems analyst. A programmer, a developer, typically have to keep track of, let's say, 10 things at the same time, just for programming. So when the phone rings, that person will lose like 2 items, right? Pick up the phone and somebody says, your program doesn't work, blah, 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 it crashes here when I do something, da, 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 da. Okay, another 5 items will be lost. So, so you only have 5 items, retained from before the phone call, okay? So after the phone call, depending on, how, angry the other person is and how distracting it is, you might only have 2 items left. But you need all 10 items to continue the programming. What do? You have to slowly ramp up your mind again, get those 8 items that you lost because of the telephone call. You have to put it back into the foreground of your mind before you can continue to program. And that's why programmers absolutely do not like distractions. Okay, they just want to be locked up in the dark room, and put on their headphones, and say, don't disturb me when I'm programming. And then when they get out of the room, it's like 24 hours later. And they don't even realize that 24 hours has passed, especially when the room has no windows, right? You might think that this is all stereotype, from movies and stuff like that. But as a developer myself, I can say that it is true. When you're writing programs, there are so many things you have to keep track, in your mind, that you don't really want any distractions. Okay, and you don't want to stop either, because the moment you stop, the next time you have to start again, you have to ramp up your mind again, and it takes a little bit of time to ramp up to the point where, okay, this is the context, this is where I left off last time, and so on and so forth. Okay, and not everyone has the ability to stay focused for hours at a time. Some people look at this requirement or this particular trait of a programmer and say, oh no, I have ADD, and that means programming is not for me. That is entirely untrue. Okay, I suspect that I had ADD when I was a kid. I probably still do. But still, for those of you who have visited my office, you can easily tell and go like, yeah, I think you still have ADD. But ADD has nothing of attention deficit disorder has nothing to do with programming, because ADD only applies to things that I have to do. It does not apply to things that I like to do. Okay. In fact, most of the time, people with ADD are more focused when they are doing things that they enjoy doing. Okay. If you compare the attention, okay, let's say we all have the same amount of quote unquote attention. Okay. In other words, okay, we all have the same amount of attention. It's about how we distribute our attention that is different. Okay, that makes programmers different from other people. Let's say we are talking about an administrative assistant. Okay, do you think that an administrative assistant has to keep track of multiple things at the same time? Phone calls, typing, reminding the boss, you have a meeting in 3 minutes. Oh, okay, which room are we supposed to go in that meeting? Okay, it's over here. So a lot of things. So the attention pattern of a administrative assistant is more like a floodlight, okay, or more like a light, right in the middle of a room, and it illuminates in all directions. Okay. The attention of a programmer during the programming part is more like a laser beam. Okay. So you have all the energy, all 10 watts, okay, which is not a whole lot of energy, but it's all focused on one single dot. That's the attention span, of a programmer is very, very focused when they are doing, when they're programming. All right. So if that's not, enough, there's a process called debugging when people write programs, when they develop programs. The term bug, B-U-G bug, refers to. There was a story about that. Does anyone know about the story of why we call defects in programs bugs? Go ahead.
So when they use binary punch cards, a moth got stuck on one of the holes and ended up causing a problem in the program.
Yeah, I think that was the original story of why people coined the term bug. When the program does not behave the way it's supposed to, they'll say there's a bug in your program. Okay, now obviously we don't have bugs anymore, today. Well, we don't have physical bugs, don't really bother us anymore when it comes to programming, because we don't have punch cards anymore. But what we do is we still use the term bug to refer to defects of a program. Whenever your program does not behave the way it's supposed to, we say there's a bug or defect in your program. So most programs that's worth writing will not work right the first time, okay? Because after all, they are written by people, and people make mistakes. Software development is an iterative process. It involves thinking, coding, testing, debugging, which means you are trying to figure out why my program is not working the way it's supposed to. That part, diagnosing faulty programs, can take up much of the work hours of a developer. In fact, most of the time when you become a software engineer or a developer, after you get your bachelor's degree working for a company, the first job that you might get is just to fix the bugs of other people, to fix defects in a program, an existing program. You're not going to write any new code, you're going to fix existing code. This task of diagnosing faulty code also requires extended length of long times or long periods of focus an analytical mind, and also a temperament that's to stay calm after repeated failure to locate the problems. Okay. Now this is really kind of the core of being a good programmer or a good developer, is to say, okay, I'm trying this way to try to figure out what the problem is. Nope, that did not explain it or did not fix it. Okay, logically speaking, what else can be causing this problem? And just deal with the problem in a logical way without losing the temper. Okay, and some people can do it, and some people cannot do it. I think some of you have heard of code rage, CODE, code rage. You will see flying monitors, mice, flying across the room, keyboards that are broken, and stuff like that. Those are typical examples of people who probably should not have become programmers in the first place. Mr. Spock would make a good programmer. And here we go, half the class is going like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Mr. Worf, would not make a good programmer. But he's not the worst. There are worse characters like Deanna Troi. Definitely not. Don't let her touch any computer. So there goes. The another 25% of the class. I just lost another 25% of the class. Right. All right. Now this debugging task, how well someone can debug a program, is really what separates people who really should become programmers from people who should not become programmers. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? No questions? All right. Now, let's say that your house is already built. You've got good contractors. They got your house built in time, on time. On schedule. What do you do next? Move in. Right after the contractor say, it's all done. The last lock is installed, and here are the keys. Yep.
You have to check it again, make sure everything is just a final check. And
Yep.
Make sure you need inspectors to do it.
Yep, you need inspectors to do it. Most of the time, you have a county inspector to make sure that everything is done to code. Like the wiring, the switches, piping and stuff like that. Everything that is observable, an inspector, that belongs to the county or the city will have to come in and double check everything is actually done correctly. Okay, and that's important. Okay, why don't you just trust your contractors to have done the right job, or hire your contractors to inspect the house again?
Because they could take shortcuts.
Well, let's say those are honest people. You can trust them. Okay, so they're not intentionally trying to deceive you. Yep, go ahead.
It's just not their responsibility to do that.
Okay, it's not their responsibility. That's fine, but I can still pay them to do it, right?
Right.
Yep. Mhm.
Codes and laws change.
Sorry?
Codes and laws change.
I'm not getting. Sorry.
The codes that the contractor has to follow using the building materials and whatnot, they can change.
Okay, but I already said they are honest people, right?
No, but they could have changed without them knowing, like they change what kind of zoning laws.
Okay, so they may not be aware of the laws. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the correct.
Okay.
They're human.
They're human, okay?
They make errors.